Is your phone, smartwatch, or Wi-Fi silently wrecking your health while you sleep? Well, let's talk EMF for a second. In this episode, we're diving into a topic that blew my mind, literally with EMF radiation. I've never really researched it, and chances are you haven't either, but that changes today. Joining me is Arthur, the founder of HAVN, spelled HAVN, taking out the EMF as his tagline. Arthur started this company and developed a cutting-edge apparel to shield you from the invisible wave of electromagnetic frequencies emitted by all our devices. So he breaks it down what EMF actually is, what the science is about long-term effects to our health, and also some of the new technologies that are already starting in some of the bigger cities that are astronomically pumping more EMF than ever before. So trust me, stick around just to get some knowledge on this and see what you can do to start cutting some of this out of your life. Arthur, I just want to thank you for coming on my show. I've never had anyone come on to ever talk about EMF. I've never really researched EMF and all the protection we should be having. How bad is it with all the different electronics? I mentioned to you before I started the show that the only thing I've been doing, because I saw a social media post on it, was at least your phone, which is usually charging on your bedside table, just at least put it as far away as possible, or at least below your bed to at least help us out. So as my audience always knows, we like to get to know guests and see how you got even into this field, because not too many people are doing it. So welcome, and let's hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah. Well, Brad, thanks for having me. This is going to be a fun one, and hopefully we can shed some light on EMF for your audience here. I'm very excited to dive in.
All right. Thank you.
I think you wanted to start kind of with how I got into the EMF world. So my background, I'll actually start back to my childhood a little bit. I grew up with two grandparents who've been battling cancer for my entire life. And so from a very early age, I've been exposed to the notion that the choices that you make with regards to your exposure in life can very much impact your likelihood of staying healthy in the long run. That led to me developing a passion for health and wellness and longevity specifically. And I ended up graduating with a master's degree in engineering and biology with a focus on human health. My very first job was studying the genomic patterns of prostate cancer. And through this, I was exposed to the first studies, I was exposed to my first time reading the studies about the science behind EMF and their link to cancer. And that opened a kind of worm for me. I ended up diving into the research, read that EMF exposure was classified as a class 2B human carcinogen by the World Health Organization, and that it had a broader potential long-term health effect outside of just cancer that ranged from cardiovascular disease, neurological disorders, and fertility issues. And so this is where the engineer side of my brain started working with regards to, we're living in a world where we're going towards more and more exposure, not less. And the number of studies that are being done on the subject is also increasing rapidly. And as awareness is going to grow, people will have a rightful need to want to be protected. And this is where I've set out to build a solution, and that solution is HAVN. But yeah, that's how I end up where I am today.
Very cool. Well, for us newbies out there, what is EMF and some basic science behind it? When did this kind of all start? I mean, EMF, I don't even know.
Electromagnetic frequencies. Yeah, so EMF are radiation that are being emitted by all of our devices that are electronic devices, that specifically the ones that are connected, in order to communicate with each other. So if you take a cell phone, for instance, your cell phone is going to emit radiation, EMF, in order to communicate with a cell phone tower, in order to communicate with a Wi-Fi router, and in order to communicate with your wearable or connected devices that you have in your home. So the cell phone was very much the first culprit with regards to our EMF exposure. And then laptop and Wi-Fi came out, then wearable technologies, Apple Watches, earbuds, fitness trackers, etc. And then there you go, whoop. And then you're getting into smart homes, smart TVs, smart cars, and smart cities. So the amount of exposure that we've been subject to has increased exponentially in recent years, and especially with the new technologies that are emerging, such as 5G, which require about 10 times more antennas compared to 4G in order to function, which are higher frequencies, radiation. So they travel less far, but they're much more powerful. And so the inherent nature of EMF makes them hard to combat at a device level, because if you're trying to block EMF from your cell phone, let's take the cell phone as an example, well, then your cell phone is not receiving any calls, any texts, it's not connected to the internet anymore. And so really the only thing we can do today, if we're trying to lower that EMF exposure, is to protect our essential organs from that EMF exposure.
Wow. So something like simple as like a alarm clock on your bedside, is pending this is not a newer one that connects to your phone and all that. Like the old school one, it's plugged in. There's no real EMF coming out from that. It's all this new smart technology because it has to connect to something. So that's easy to, to think of. Like my microphone right here. There's nothing that this is connecting to. It just plugs into my laptop and that's it. Now my laptop is constantly going to the cloud. It's Bluetooth with everything in my house. That's my immediate problem right now in this room. So
correct. Exactly.
So how much, with all this research you've seen and all that, how much exposure and how much damage is being done right now? God only knows, like you said, the future, we got to start thinking about this, but is this a problem right now, or is healthy, clean living enough to combat what we currently have right now? Like for myself, I've got a computer, a phone, a couple smart TVs, and a Whoop. Maybe there's a couple more, but is that enough to really do anything?
$1 million question here, Brad. As I mentioned before, the amount of exposure that we've been under has evolved drastically in recent years and continues to evolve. If you take self-driving cars, I live in LA, we have Waymos all around.
Mm-hmm.
Those self-driving cars are emitting an extremely high amount of EMF because they need to be connected in order to function. And so as we continue to evolve from a technological perspective, our exposure also continues to increase. We have over 2,000 studies today that link EMF with DNA damage, with increased risks of cancer, with neurological disorders, cardiovascular issues, fertility, etc. Now, what we don't have is what is the exact long-term impact of all of that cumulative exposure, and for how long is it going to take before we're seeing that impact? The way I am looking at it personally is a little bit like pollution here in the city, which is if you're riding your bike and you're right behind a bus or a truck that is emitting that like black smog fumes, you're probably gonna let it go for a little bit, back off, and not like breathe in as much as you can. I like to think about it the same way, which is how much of those fumes is too much. Well, we don't know, but what we know is that you're not gonna want to like just inhale as much as you can. And one might say that the less amount of those fumes you inhale, the better. And so I think get the same for any type of environmental pollutant or environmental stressor, which is the less exposure you're getting, the better off your body is going to be. And so if we want to get, and the reason behind this, just to tie this well, and we can go a little deeper if your audience is interested in the biological mechanisms, but the reason why EMF exposure has such a wide breadth of effects, we've just talked about DNA damage, we've talked about infertility, we've talked about neurological disorders. Some people feel brain fog. We know it has, through studies, it has an impact on sleep. There's just a wide breadth of effect. And so why can it affect so many different things? The most widely accepted theory today, based on the science that we have, is that EMF exposure can activate certain cellular pathways due to their electromagnetic nature, and specifically voltage-gated calcium channels in our cells, which then lead to cascade of reaction in mitochondria, and this cascade of reaction ends up increasing the free radicals in our body. And free radicals are the reason why antioxidants are being touted as a good thing to consume, because when you have an imbalance between antioxidants and free radicals, you're entering a state of oxidative stress, which is a damaging state for your cells, for your tissues, and for your organs, which can lead to a variety of results. And that is at the root cause of a lot of today's chronic conditions and long-term health problems. And so EMF exposure is far from being the only culprit with regards to increasing free radicals.
Yeah.
Poor sleep is going to do that. Poor diet, no exercising, all of these are going to contribute to increasing free radicals as well. And so that's why having a healthy lifestyle is not just about what you eat and not sleeping at night and partying all night, or it's about the balance in all those respective areas. And so that's a long-winded answer to say that.
At least it puts it in a category of like pollutants, smog, mold. It's the same things we can't really get rid of this stuff. It's always going to be around us, but we can limit exposure, try to clean up as much as we can. And then that's great about free radicals. A lot of us who are healthier are really looking into antioxidants on a daily basis. So, all right, so at least I can put it in that category. It reminds me of like it's not the same, but it reminds me of the similar kind of epidemic of plastics in our food and water.
Very much
There's
so.
really nothing we can do except for try to clean up your water dispensers, make them glass, your tubing, silicone, like all that stuff. But I mean, we're just around this 24/7. It's going to get into your body, and we really don't know long-term effects of this yet. And it's like, what do we do? As far as the EMF, is there any technology that's coming out that could replace how things are communicating with each other to emit something different than EMF, or this is all we got?
Unfortunately, not. What we're moving towards is actually, as I mentioned, with 5G and the emergence of 6G is more. And the reason behind this is, again, it's this EMF exposure is coming from a positive originally, right? Which is technology is evolving, and we're living in a world where things become easier. Think about navigating a city without Google Maps back then, right?
Yeah.
Like versus today, you can be dropped off anywhere and you know where you are, and you can order Uber, order some food. Like there's just this evolution of technology that is going towards needing more coverage and needing more speed and more power. And so that leads to continuing developing that technology into more exposure and stronger exposure. This will, just like with every technology cycle, at some stage will probably work towards something like this. But in the meantime, the race that we're on as countries is a race towards being as technologically evolved as possible, even if that means that there's a flip side to that technology. And again, think about cars, for instance, right? Like we are still driving a lot of cars that are emitting fumes and are polluting our cities. And the reality is, if we didn't have cars, we'd be stuck in 200 years ago, and we wouldn't be nearly as competitive as we are today.
Yeah. And so it's basically just a game of, it's a pollutant, do the best you can. So in your household, be as clean living as you can, having antioxidants, know where your EMF producing are. And I would think, just to make it easy, a good chunk of your time is spent sleeping. So get them out of the bedroom. There's an easy 8 to 9 hour hit right there, and then work your way there. As far as like what's in our house, what is the highest EMF producing damaging devices right now?
So the first thing that you have to know is that the amount of exposure you're getting is inversely proportional to the distance. And so most damaging devices that you're going to have, or like the highest exposure, is going to be from anything that is close to your body. Your cell phone, your wearables, if you have your Wi-Fi router that is right next to your couch or to your bed or to your desk, to essentially like a high living area, that is also going to be a main culprit. These are the items that I would mostly focus on with regards to reducing exposure. There are a few things you can do, as you mentioned, focusing on sleep. That's 25 to 30% of our lives right here. When you live in a house, it's easier than when you live in an apartment where you're also getting the Wi-Fi signal of your neighbors, and the more dense of an area you're living in, generally the more exposure you're going to get from outside sources that are not just the ones in your home. But the first steps you can take is get your phone out of your bedroom, or put it on airplane mode. If you're sleeping with your phone next to you, you don't need that phone to be on. And if you do, then bring it outside of the room and put it on loud, or at least as far away from bed as possible. The second thing you can do is a lot of Wi-Fi routers can be programmed in order to turn off at night. So you can program them to be off between, say, midnight and 5 a.m. if you know that everyone's sleeping by that time and that no one needs to be doing any podcast recording. And the last thing I would say is, when you get home, take your cell phone out of your pocket and put it on the table or away from where you're spending time. And that is already going to make a pretty sizable difference on how much exposure you're having. We recently also started offering EMF meters on our website.
There we go.
If you go check it out, which is a super easy to use device that allows you to measure the amount of exposure that you're getting from different devices. And I think for a lot of people in my family and my loved ones, it's been a really helpful device in helping them realize that, oh my gosh, our microwave, when it's on, is actually emitting EMF, which your cell phone radiation and your microwave radiation are actually exactly the same. And most microwaves are leaking today. And so that if you're not standing at least 6 feet away from it when it's on, you're actually being bombarded by EMF. And so, just watching your food cook like this, it's probably a good idea. So super helpful little device to test out different parts of the home.
Yeah, well, that's cool. That was going to answer my question I was going to ask you. You can just get one of those meters and test yourself, but just for fun, between the Whoop that's on my wrist, the phone that's on the ground by my bed, or my router that's literally in my bedroom closet, probably 10 feet away with a closed door, could you guess which one's probably the worst at producing the most?
I would.
Or you need that
I hate
meter?
to say that, but I would take the Whoop off when I'm sleeping.
Dang, that's the whole point.
And I know. I've actually had a conversation with them about that specifically, and I've tried both Whoop and Aura Ring. Aura, not affiliated with any of those companies, but
Yeah.
Aura has done an incredible job on trying to reduce the level of EMF emission that they produce when on, specifically because of the studies that are linking EMF exposure to sleep quality disorders. And we've seen this in early studies we've done where people who start wearing, we have pajamas with HAVN that allows you to be fully protected, especially when you're living in apartments or in a city environment. And we're seeing a pretty significant impact on about 2/3 of the population when they start wearing HAVN pajamas. And so all of that to say, Aura has done a phenomenal job at limiting EMF exposure and specifically for that reason. Whoop, at least the last time I tasted a Whoop bracelet, which was a couple of years ago, they might have changed since then. I haven't retested, but it was as much exposure as a phone. And so
Okay.
because of the proximity to your head specifically, that is the one change I would start with in your case.
Okay.
Brian.
Well, like I said before, easiest thing to do is focus on your sleep since you're spending so much time in there. Maybe do your suggestion, get that router to shut off during those hours. No problem. I mean, this is just the same thing every night telling me what I got. I don't need to now know what my sleep is every single day. I could take this and put it away and throw my phone on airplane mode if there's no emergencies pending. So those are little easy fixes to get myself 30% less EMF per day. Is there, and then we'll go to your clothing, but is there any type of device that's just a straight up EMF blocker bomb that can just take a radius out of 20 feet in all directions? No? Okay.
If you, well, let's put it this way. If you search for one, you're going to find some online.
Yeah.
These are absolute scam. They've been going on for about 20 years. Usually they're calling this purifying or harmonizing or some sort of word that has no sense in the physical world. They're not based in any reality, physical reality, and the FCC has been going after a lot of those companies that prey on people's fear, like the stickers, the pendants, the things you put on your desk that create a protection dome. That's not based in any physical reality. And if you think about it, again, your phone, the reason our phones are emitting EMF is, and I'm taking the phone again as an example, is to gain access to the internet, to gain access to getting calls and receiving text and sending them. If any of those devices were working, they would
You wouldn't be able to get
create,
anything.
you wouldn't get anything when those are on. So unfortunately, not a thing. However, as you mentioned, your phone has a built-in airplane mode. Super easy. And then that's not emitting any radiation. Now, it's also not connected to the internet.
Yeah.
But at night, it doesn't matter as much.
Yeah. If all you need alarm clock function on your phone, and that'll still work.
There you go.
Then you're fine.
Yep.
Okay.
And for your router, just to finish, tie the loop on this, I mentioned some routers have this built-in functionality when you can turn it off at night. If you don't have this, you can buy on Amazon for $5 or $10 a programming plug that allows you to essentially turn off the plug from whatever time you want at night. So you don't even need that function on your router. You can engineer this.
Or you can just pull the plug and remember to plug it in every morning. I mean,
there you go. It's even cheaper.
Basic. Gotcha. Well, cool. Well, Arthur, let's talk about your company HAVN, spelled HAVN, because you take the EMF out, which is, I think, really cool. Love the hat. I went on your website and I saw the hat. I saw a beanie. You just talked about pajamas. I'm sure you got t-shirts, long sleeves, pants, all that kind of stuff. And for someone just starting out, like you're saying, protect your head, protect your organs would be the most economical way of doing this. But what else you got? And also, how'd you make this?
Yeah. Well, I'll start with I mentioned during the inception story that started building HAVN to allow people to be protected in a world where exposure is increasing exponentially. What I didn't mention is I'm, and hopefully that came through with our conversation here, I'm very much pro technology, and I use a number of EMF emitting devices in my daily life. And so when we started building out HAVN, the North Star for us has been, how can we protect our long-term health, maximize our longevity, and minimize the long-term health effect of EMF, while also continuing to live a modern life and enjoying the fruits of all the modern technology? So with HAVN, we started with underwear originally. That was so that you keep walking around with your cell phone on you without, if you're a guy, or actually if you're a girl as well, and you're keeping your cell phone in your pocket without impacting your genitals. We then moved into headwear, protect your brain, which is between your genitals and your brain, you're already covering a lot of the major part of the organs that have been studied. And then t-shirts, pajamas, we've got gaiters for the thyroid, hoodies for traveling, and we've got a number of other products, Pro blankets recently for home. But anyways, like our North Star again has been, how can we build products that allow you to continue using technology, to not change any of your habits, and to just essentially change your wardrobe and be able to be protected. And so getting to the technology now, as I mentioned, you cannot shield EMF at a device level without completely stopping the connection that this device has. And on top of it, even if you were doing this when you live in a city, you are getting exposure from cell phone antennas, from your neighbors. In this office, we have about 34 Wi-Fi signals, something like this, that we're able to get.
Yeah.
So even if we were unplugging our Wi-Fi router, we're still being exposed to a lot of cumulative exposure. And so we worked on building a fabric technology called Wave Stopper that blocks 99.7% of EMF ranging from 400 megahertz to 40 gigahertz, which is the whole spectrum of electronic devices that are being used in a consumer setting. And then we turn that fabric into the pieces of clothing that I've mentioned before. So it's a proprietary technology that is based off silver fibers. And I'll show it here for people who are watching the video. What you're seeing here is a mesh of pure silver fibers that are built in a way that creates an electromagnetic shield and essentially reflects and diffuses the EMFs that are reaching the fabric. And then through the way this mesh of proprietary silver is surrounding your essential organs, we're able to reduce by about 1,000 factor the amount of exposure that those organs are getting. Oh. And it is tested and certified by independent labs.
So in my mind, you mentioned you had blankets too. By the way, do you have like bed sheets too? Or just blankets that would go on the bed? Okay.
But we're ever increasing the number of products that come out.
So imagine taking a blanket. In my mind, this may be a stupid question, but why can't I take one of those blankets, go into my closet, and just drape it over my router? Is that blocking the signal from the router? Oh, but that's not taking care of my neighbors and all my other problems, right? So why not wear pajamas or have a blanket that just covers my body while I sleep?
And if you want to throw that blanket onto your router, you absolutely can. Now, you can also just unplug your router. You're going to get the same effect, right? So really what and with that being said, when you're home, when you're working right now, you need that router to be on. And you could be wearing the blanket on your lap right now and at least like protect part of your body so like the typical use case of the blanket is going to be, you're at home, you're watching TV, that TV is connected, you're having your phone, because most people now cannot just watch TV without also being on their phones. And you have your computer nearby, well, throw on the blanket and you're already covering a chunk of your body during that activity. The blanket was aimed at being a versatile product, but again, the way we built the product line was to create maximum level of protection for as many organs as possible for as long as possible during the day. And where I would start is probably headwear and underwear.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it sounds like a blanket, the beanie, and some pajamas. Because the other problem is, I'd unplug my router, but my router is supplying my alarm to my house, all my camera systems and all that. I can't really have those go out, and they're lowering my protection that way. So easy way is just wear that stuff while you sleep. You just got 7 to 9 hours of coverage right there.
Yeah, and we've created a lightweight version of the beanie that is specifically built for either summer times, if you don't like hats, or sleeping. And a lot of our customers sleep with it to complete the protection package that the pajamas offer.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Arthur, anything else you want to put out there before we get into where we can get this stuff, and any socials, anything else you want to put out there?
The main thing I would say is, just like with everything else when it comes to pollutants, etc., I would not stop panicking today with regards to the exposure that we have, but I would continue doing research. We've got a lot of resources on our website, havenwear.com, where you can dive more into the science and into the existing research and educate yourself. And then, Brad, you've shared a lot of tactics and strategies that people can start doing today. You don't even need to buy our products. These are free, and you can already start reducing your exposure significantly by having the right habits and the right gestures. And hopefully you can spread the word as well. Today there is about 1 out of 2 Americans who are aware of the fact that EMF can be bad for their health, which means that 1 out of 2 people you're crossing paths with have no idea. And so specifically for your loved ones, I think we're seeing a lot of people who share HAVN or even just, as I mentioned, like the effect of EMF with their loved ones. And that's how, as a society, we can continue evolving together and hopefully staying healthier in the long run. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at one point, maybe humans will evolve to just be okay with EMF, but that's probably millions of years. So it doesn't help us now.
You're not looking at millions, but you're looking at thousands.
Exactly.
There is when you're looking at a lot of our modern chronic diseases, they are because the lifestyle that we're currently living is so different from the one our ancestors were living just even 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years ago, and we're still not evolved for it. And so we're certainly not evolved for the incredible increase in exposure that we've had over the last 35 years, when the first cell phones were starting to be something, and you would use them 4 minutes per week on average, to today being glued to them. But in the meantime, there are solutions out there. That's why HAVN exists, and there are steps that you can take. And fortunately, at least this is one pollutant where you can significantly reduce your exposure to without impacting your lifestyle, contrary to pollution from exhaust fumes, where unless you're willing to relocate to another city, there's not much you can do today. So that's the silver lining here, at least on this specific issue.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Arthur, I just want to thank you for coming on my show and enlightening us. Like I said, my knowledge of EMF, I didn't even know what EMF stood for. I knew the concept, but none of the real dangers and all that. So I really appreciate it. And my audience always knows I'll put all those links you just mentioned in the show notes. They can educate themselves on your website and other channels you have. But for myself, I think just the easy one, like we've been talking about, is, man, I gotta fix the sleep situation, and that'll at least get me a third of the way in the right direction. So
yeah, and get one of our EMF meters that will help you identify sources that you might not know are emitting EMF. There are many of them in the bedroom that not everyone is aware of, but sound machines are sometimes connected, and alarm clocks can be also connected, etc. So it's always a good device to have on in order to do that little audit of where are my emission sources and how close are they to the places I spend my time. So in any case, thanks so much for having me. That was a blast, and hopefully for the audience, you guys have learned something today and we're able to make a positive difference.
absolutely. I appreciate all you do.